going on, everyone, at the Rush Hour Sports Network? It is yours truly, Jay Smoothe, here to give you guys the NFL show like I do every week. And joining me, of course, is B Money. How are you doing, sir?
What's up, fam?
Doing good, doing good. We're pretty much just gonna jump right into the news because there was a lot that happened since we were last live, and may as well just get to it now and pretty much just get it all out the way before we go ahead and wrap up our conference preview. Let's just go ahead and start with, I'd say, with the biggest news. Well, let's start with this first big news item. Aaron Rodgers decided to take himself out of the quarterback chase and re sign with the Packers for a 4 year deal that is up to, I believe, $200 million, at least 150 worth is guaranteed of that. So he decides to stay in Green Bay. He's not going to leave. What are your thoughts on it?
I'm surprised by it, frankly. But you know, it is what it is. After all the noise that was made last offseason about him not wanting to be in Green Bay and all that mess that was made out of it, and just given just the unceremonious one and done that they did in the playoffs, I'm surprised that he wanted to stick around.
Yeah, you know what it read to me? It's classic Aaron Rodgers. Pretty much wanted all the attention. It wanted everyone to talk about him, and obviously wanted the Packers to basically bow down to him because the Packers always had their way of doing things, and then when Rodgers came along, he pretty much forced their hand and forced them to change how they think and said, okay, this really is the guy that we should lock down. Of course, they didn't really do all that with Brett Favre when he was there during his prime, but hey, Rodgers was able to get the deal he wanted, and in the end, he wins out because he really got his money. But what's interesting here is where do the Packers go from here? Because now you got to sign Adams, and now you got to try to put some pieces around Rodgers here because essentially what you have signed up for is for him to complain for the next 4 years while pretty much taking up all the money in the salary cap. So yeah, they're gonna have a lot to work on during the offseason, but it's still a big win for the Packers because it's Aaron Rodgers.
Well, actually, it does go a little bit further than that because since Aaron Rodgers did sign this extension, what they ended up doing on the contract is they restructured his deal for this coming season so that his cap hit for this year is actually lower. So, as a result, before the deadline on Tuesday, the Packers signed Davante Adams to a franchise tag.
Right, that's the thing. The plan was to sign both of them, but here's the thing: where are they going to go from here? You sign him and Adams, but what other pieces are you going to do? Are they going to go draft? I assume they're just going to have to go draft from there and hope everything else works itself out because you're even going to have pieces on the side like Zadarius Smith that are going to be walking. You know what I mean? Like,
That's true. That's true. And I think the expectation is some of those guys will be gone. But
exactly.
also, I think another thing to consider is that who's to say that, especially with this extension for Rodgers being 4 years, that Davante Adams, we end up finding out about him in the next couple of weeks that he signs an extension so that his cap hit is lower so that they can sign some players back. So
Yeah,
they might have something. They might have something brewing. Who knows?
they might, but it's highly unlikely. They're more likely going to have to go to the draft to get their players because just signing Aaron Rodgers alone is a big one. But while both contracts are going to be reduced on the cap, I imagine the players they can get to build around them are not going to be the highest caliber. But maybe they could build something with it because Rodgers is known to make something out of nothing. He's done it before, so. They're likely going to have to go draft though, but and there's some pieces in the draft they can get that actually could help them out on both sides of the ball. So it will be interesting to see where they go from there. Let's see what else. The Cowboys, of course, they re-signed Dak Prescott and all that. Let's see. Oh, here's the other big news. Uh, one quarterback stays, but one quarterback decides to go, and that quarterback is Russell Wilson. He was officially traded from the Seahawks to the Denver Broncos in a trade that included multiple draft picks and players, One of the players being being traded to the Seahawks, of course, was Drew Lock, the quarterback bust that the Broncos invested in and later found out he wasn't worth the shit, so they sent him to Seattle. Uh, my official thought is this was pretty surprising. Um, Not surprising that the Broncos were going to get a quarterback because they needed one. Teddy Bridgewater was not the answer. He was just a band aid, and he was a band aid due to the wounds caused by Drew Lock's trash play on the field. So they went. So John Elway decided to pull. Decided to pull a little trick of his when he goes to a proven quarterback that can get them a few winning years and maybe a Super Bowl out of it. Did it with Peyton Manning. Now he's doing it with Russell Wilson. The only difference is Russell Wilson's arm is not dead like Peyton Manning's was when he got there.
Russell Wilson's a lot younger.
Well, that's
what
what
Manning was when he got here.
well, that's my point. You know what I mean? He doesn't have a dead arm. He's not run through the ground. It's still the same caliber because Manning was a winner before he got there, and Russell was a winner before he got there. Won a Super Bowl. So really, this was a smart move for the Broncos, and actually, Russell's likely going to last longer with the Broncos than Peyton Manning did if all plays out correctly. And they have the pieces already. They already have a good running back. They have receivers such as Jerry Jeudy that can hold it down. They're rebuilding the defense with life after Von Miller. So, considering the young team that Russell has there, it was smart for him to go to Denver. The other choice was the Washington Commanders, who, by the way, have been more. We're going to talk about them in a bit when it comes to quarterbacks, but they were doing their due diligence on everybody. They were even asking the Chiefs how many first rounders you need for Patrick Mahomes. They were going just insane shit with every team. And they were one of the ones that acquired about Russell, and they actually offered more than the Broncos did because one of the criticisms I saw about the trade was that the Broncos gave up the farm, and they did. But you give up the farm for a guy like that because Russell Wilson's a proven winner. And the Commanders did the same thing, but because it's Washington, D.C., and because of the Commanders, nobody wants to fucking go there. We're going to be honest. No free agent really wants to go there unless they have no choice. One we'll be talking about in a bit. But in this case, Russell Wilson knew he could win now with the Broncos, and going there, while a surprise, makes all the sense in the world, and they're probably going to be in line for, like, maybe, if not a Super Bowl favorite, maybe a AFC Championship favorite, because now they enter a division where he's going to be playing against Derek Carr twice a year, Justin Herbert twice a year, and Patrick Mahomes twice a year. Like, the AFC West is now going to be pretty much the best division of football when it comes to quarterbacks. And funny enough, the NFC West is probably going to be the worst now because, the thing with Kyler Murray is insane. He's going to get his money, but it's crazy. You still have Stafford there. The Seahawks are now going to be at the bottom. And really, it's probably just going to come down to the Cardinals and Rams now because I don't see what the NFC West is pretty much going to be now that Russell Wilson's going to be out of there and out of that mix. So, it's going to.
There's Trey Lance.
There. Well, that's the thing.
The promise of what he might be able to do with the Niners.
Yeah, that's the thing about Trey Lance. We need to see that first.
He's the wild card.
Yeah,
really.
that's actually accurate. That is a very good point. He is the true wild card there. I think he's going to do good based on what I've seen him in college, but. Yeah, when we see it translate to the pros, we'll know for sure. But with that being said, the West, the NFC West, certainly not as strong as the AFC West right about now. What do you think of this trade, personally?
Yeah, so first, I guess before I get into talking about that trade, you were comparing Denver going for Peyton Manning and Russell Wilson. When the Broncos traded for Peyton Manning, by the way, 10 years ago, exactly, back in 2012, Peyton Manning was 36 come week one of that season.
Right.
Russell Wilson, come September, will be 33. So plenty of time for Russ to still do some stuff and make some noise in Denver.
And also a noteworthy thing, when Peyton Manning arrived in Denver, he had a dead noodle arm, and that was one of
Yeah,
the
he was coming off an injury as well.
yeah, he was coming off an injury, he had that dead arm. Russell Wilson does not have a dead arm. He's not coming off any serious injuries, and if anything, he has a chance to last longer in Denver than Peyton Manning did, in my opinion. Of course, it all depends on how protection is and all that, but I believe he could last longer, possibly. At least it feels that way. But anyways, what were you going to say about the actual transaction?
But furthermore about the trade, I mean, I think Denver wins this trade. I mean, you heard me talk a lot on this show throughout the season about how much promise I thought Denver had if only they had a quarterback.
Right.
I mean, let's not forget, I think this team was like a game or two away from clinching the playoffs quietly, even with Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock as their quarterbacks throughout the year.
Right.
So, you add in Russell Wilson to the mix, assuming their receivers stay healthy, because I know Jerry Jeudy's had some injuries past couple of years. I know Cortland Sutton's had some injuries the past couple of years, but if they're healthy, and you got Melvin Gordon in the backfield, and their defense is really strong, and of course, there's also the memes and jokes that Von Miller might want to come back to Denver now. Denver's got a chance to make some noise, so they're definitely going to be a team to watch. As you said, I think the AFC West is going to be a really fun division next year. They were already kind of fun this year, but I think it's that much more must-see television next year with the teams that they're going to have. And just when you consider, so you had the Chiefs and the Raiders that were the playoffs teams last year. We thought the Chargers were going to be there, and they weren't. And, this Raiders team is going to have a new coach. So, all these things. It's going to be interesting. This Broncos team has a new coach as well. So, this is all going to be interesting stuff in that division. As for Seattle, we already talked about it throughout the end of the season, but it was very clear signs of an end of an era, and now the rebuild's beginning. They get Drew Lock, but you already know that they don't have any faith in him. He's just there to be a stopgap until they can find who they actually need for the future.
Absolutely. And by the way, just to throw some names out there, there is a very strong suggestion that the Seahawks may draft Malik Willis, who is the quarterback out of Liberty. By the way, just a little side note, doesn't mean much. Combine numbers indicate Malik Willis has the strongest arm out of all the quarterbacks in terms of throwing, because throwing is the big thing in the league now. Strongest arm there, so he has the most upside. Also, he has been compared to RG3 and Lamar Jackson. He has the big arm and he has the scramble ability. He has the capability to be a player like that. Now, the Seahawks have been rumored to, apparently it seems like the Seahawks are going to draft him because he fits their offense very well. Two other names to throw out there. Jimmy Garoppolo's the wild card. He's having surgery on the shoulder, and if they do their due diligence and all goes well, he might get picked up. And another name that is going to be a bit of a wild card. Not really a wild card. Jimmy G's probably going to be the favorite. But a wild card is going to be Project Jordan Love. Because if you think about it, now that Aaron Rodgers has been signed on for 4 years, Love was only brought in to piss off and push Rodgers. And now that that's happened, and the Packers have seemingly changed from what they thought they were going to do, which is bring in Love and just groom another quarterback to be the takeover. It seems like Love's going to need a new home. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Seahawks end up being one of the teams that inquire about him. So just 2 quarterbacks to be thrown out there. And if they don't go with those 2 quarterbacks, don't be surprised if Malik Willis is the first quarterback off the board taken by the Seahawks.
Wouldn't be surprised at all. My last notes on this trade, Shelby Harris and Noah Fant, tough to see them go because they were good pieces for Denver.
Yes, they were.
So I know both of them are punching the air that they got sent to Seattle because of this. But,
that's true.
Seattle's got some chances, in the coming years to rebuild. They get 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th-rounder in this trade. So
yes, they did.
They got some capital to make some moves in the future, but obviously I don't think we're going to be seeing Seattle make any noise for a few years. And then as for the other trades you mentioned, Carson Wentz going to Washington. I think we talked about this earlier about how I was kind of joking, like, why do I get the feeling that Carson Wentz is going to be the next devastating injury at FedEx Field?
You know what? It could very well happen, and you know what? It's funny you say that because, see, here's the thing, B Money. You know, just like you, my heart is in Baltimore, but I work in DC these days, so I split my time, and I have the chance to listen to a lot of DC sports talk as well as interact with a lot of DC sports fans in the area of my line of work, and I'll tell you this: they slandered Carson Wentz on a weekly basis, and I'll say this: the knock on Carson Wentz has been the fact that he's very soft in the personality and has never shown qualities of a leader. Uh, Considering the fact that he's been ran out of a city like Philadelphia, I don't understand how he would survive in a city like DC, if we're going to be honest. In Philadelphia, they throw snowballs at you, empty beer bottles at you. They cuss out Santa Claus. They'll piss in the bed of your truck. You know what I mean? Those Philly people don't care. And that franchise is just as gritty as the people there. DC is even worse. The sports media, they're unfiltered. They will go after him. They will make that man cry because, listen, Carson is a small town guy who honestly he could have done very well in Indianapolis, but it says a lot that Frank Wright gave up on him after 1 year. The fact that he was literally dumped on the side of the road after 1 year in Indianapolis, despite what they did, says an awful lot, man. It's clear if you lose the locker room in 1 year and then you lose your coach in 1 year, you pretty much are you're not toxic, but you certainly are somebody that should not be in a locker room. And the fact that Washington's big splash of quarterback is this guy, that ain't good. Now, what I see for Washington, I see them going after Pitt quarterback Kenny Pickett with the 11th pick, and Kenny Pickett is very good, and he's certainly worth the 11th pick. He has the smallest hands in the draft, and he's also the guy that used to do that fake sliding while running, and the NCAA and NFL were so frustrated they actually made a rule about that, so now I can't fake slide because of Kenny Pickett. But anyways, he's a very good player. Chances are Wentz is going to start the season, and then when Wentz quits about week 7, week 8, and cries about an injury, they'll throw the rookie in there. I see him as nothing more than a Band-Aid. The problem is the Commanders paid $28 million for that Band-Aid. That is a very expensive Band-Aid to have on a team that is good, but they need that quarterback to take him over the top, and he is not a long-term solution. The fact that he has been given up on by 2 franchises, including one franchise that literally wants to wash their hands of him after 1 year, says a lot. And listen, from what I understand, DC fans are not going to be happy about this. I've just driving home from work and listening to it. DC fans hate the guy, so this is already off to a bad start. The hope for Carson is that he can turn this thing around because his confidence is shot. His numbers have gone down, and quite frankly, when you disappoint a coach after 1 year and he gives up on you, that's really not going to do well for your spirit. So the man needs to repair himself in DC. And honestly, I don't know if he will. That's the question, though. Can Carson repair himself in DC? Because this is a redemption story now, if you think about it.
Yeah, and the further that redemption story now in Washington, he gets to play Philadelphia twice a year.
That's true. He now has 2 chances at revenge a year, and he not only that, he returns to a conference where I wouldn't even say he won the Super Bowl. Nick Foles won the Super Bowl, but nonetheless.
Nick Foles won the Super Bowl, but let's not forget, during that regular season, he was an MVP candidate. So
yes, he was, and that was
he got him there.
That's true.
He got him to the playoffs. So.
He did get him to the playoffs, and actually, funny enough, I believe that was his best season on record. I believe in terms of.
Yes, it was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a little alarming that the quality has gone down since then, but it shows though that Carson is he's willing to do great things, but again, it's if Carson can get rid of the mistakes cuz he has a lot he takes way too many risks and at times he can irritate coaches with his lack of leadership as well as his lack of accountability for the mistakes on the field. But we're gonna have to wait and see how this plays out. But yeah, man, look, DC is not happy to have the guy. That's all I can say. They're
Yeah,
not.
but you know what? The wild thing is about all this. I'd venture to guess though, if he doesn't shit the bed in Week 18 against Jacksonville and the Colts make the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
I bet you Carson Wentz is still an Indianapolis Colt.
Oh,
Even though they probably go one in the playoffs, I
right.
bet you he would have still been their quarterback
Oh,
if he doesn't shit the bed in Week 18.
100%. And you know what? It's funny you say that. I'm happy you said it. I do believe that Jaguars game factored into it because to lose to the Jaguars after the season they've had and after the season the Colts have when the season's in the balance and you can't win a cupcake game against the Jaguars, that is a huge red flag. So while I get it, but man, that's rough. And I actually do believe you are correct there. If Carson wins that game, we're talking about Carson's next contract. Like we're talking about Carson's future there. We're not necessarily talking about Carson moving on. So I do believe that does play a factor. And by the way, I wonder if that alone is going to hurt his confidence going into the Commanders. But in a way,
I mean, it probably will.
it probably will. But you know what? Well, it probably will. And you know what? This makes it a true redemption story now. So now Carson's going to need that revenge. Like we thought he was going to get it in Indy, but no. Now that he's back in his old division with a new team in that old division, that he has a Super Bowl ring in, he's now on a revenge tour. So let's hope this is going to be the reincarnation of Carson. If not, he's going to be done for good. I think this is his last stop.
For sure, yeah. And as for the Colts on their side, I know they get a few second-round picks in this deal.
Yes, they do.
And as far as quarterbacks, you mentioned the quarterbacks that are available for Seattle. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is the best fit in Indianapolis out of the available quarterbacks.
That is very true. He would be a very good fit there. Another name they're throwing out is Mitchell Trubisky. He's also in the mix as well, in terms of just quarterbacks in general. But yeah, Jimmy G seems like the best fit in my opinion. He would fit in Indianapolis way better than he would in Seattle, in my opinion. Yeah, just looking at the system and whatnot, he absolutely fits there better. So that's likely going to be the move. It's funny you say Jimmy G as well. I thought the Commanders were going to be all in on Jimmy G. Like I thought they were going to wait till his surgery was done and then they were going to throw money at him. But as you can tell, they were desperate for a quarterback now. They weren't ready. They were not trying to wait. Like that just goes to show their due diligence because they tried to make an offer to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron didn't even leave. They tried to make one to Russell Wilson. Russell said no, just straight shot him down. So hey, Washington tried, but this is the result of them trying. They pretty much had to make the best of a bad situation. And you know what? I have a feeling if they didn't get Carson, they probably would have gotten like Marcus Mariota or somebody like that. Somebody in that next tier of quarterback, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is, I'd say, as good as it is for them. We'll see how it pays off. But let's go ahead to the Ravens news that I know you want to talk about. Two pieces of news, funny enough.
Well, I mean, they're not really big because it's whatever, but we'll talk about the Ravens news. Tavon Young was released by the Ravens today. Ironically, this past season, 2021, was the first time he played every game.
Yeah, and you know what?
But just too late.
Right, just too little too late. Like you said, too little too late. It's good that he finally did it. Maybe he can finally be serviceable to a team, but yeah, it's a shame he was not serviceable here.
Yeah.
And the other...
And then other Ravens news...
Villanueva,
offensive tackle, calls it a career. Retires.
Yes, he does. And you know what? This now opens the door for the Ravens to draft Tyler Lindenbaum, who is a center from Iowa, who's been compared to the likes of Marshall Yanda. But I will say this: if they don't draft him, it's certainly likely they will go offensive lineman. I've seen defensive line as well, like that guy Walker from Georgia, but it would be a lot better if they went offensive line, I think, for the Ravens, especially with Villanueva retiring. It's now time to rebuild that O line, and why not start with a solid center? And if you get the kid out of Iowa, I think that's a good start, in my personal opinion. But I will get my mock draft out in the future. But just a little spoiler: I think the Ravens are good with the center, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. I know there's also some links to them maybe going for that in free agency, but
Yes.
as long as they're drafting an offensive lineman, I'm happy.
Yes, and you know what? If they get the kid out of Iowa, I think he's the most day one ready. Like if you want to talk about a lineman that you can literally draft and you can have him start week number 1, Tyler Lindenbaum is a very good choice. So I like you said, if they go for a lineman, an offensive lineman that can start day 1, then they will be in the best of shape.
Yeah, I agree.
So any other news article? Oh,
I got several pieces of news around the league.
That's true. We got several actually. But yes, go ahead with the next one.
Well, actually, I think you might. I'll let you take this one, talking about, I guess, the other big headline with the news about Calvin Ridley.
Yes. Calvin Ridley. He pulled. Well, actually, I don't know if he really pulled it because the cases were slightly different, but he pulled the NFL's version of a Pete Rose. And he is suspended indefinitely throughout the 2022 season for betting on games, while with the Falcons. Now, this is when he took his leave of absence for mental health reasons. So a bit different here, a bit of a shock. Little surprised that one. He's gambling during that, but my goodness. Like, I didn't think this would happen. I didn't think this would go down, considering the fact that he was on a leave of absence and whatnot. So this is a little surprising, but at the same time, I get why the league is pissed at this, because the thing about gambling is that it's only good if you're not if you're not an active player. If you're an active player and you're gambling on your team to win, it's highly suspicious. And while what he did not affect the integrity of the game, that risk is still very much there, especially if you're an active player. So
yeah,
I get what the league did here. However, there is the hypocrisy that, okay, you suspend that man for at least a year. That means they could very well suspend him for 2 years, depending on what they dig up. But I think it's interesting that, say, somebody fails a drug test, you get a few games. If you kick a woman on camera like Kareem Hunt, you only get a couple games, and then you're traded to a new team and nothing happens. You have cases like Ray Rice, where he gets blackballed, and then you have cases like a Kareem Hunt where you get 2 games and you just move on with your life. So there's hypocrisy there in terms of punishments, but
or Colin Kaepernick.
Exactly, or you're Colin Kaepernick. You take a knee during the anthem, and then you're just blackballed forever. But for some reason, some punishments are severe, but for some reason, despite the fact that the NFL is in bed with, the DraftKings and the FanDuels of the world, if you bet on a game, it is seen as something evil. It's like, oh my God, you're committing a cardinal sin. Like you remember the days of Pete Rose when gambling was illegal, when the Black Sox from the back in the days, they fixed a World Series game that the mob made them fix because there was money on it. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of that stuff that goes on, and the NFL knows that there's still mob presence in society, especially now that gambling is legalized and you don't have to go through bookies and loan sharks and whatnot to get your bets in. It's easy. So, and even with the NFL now being in Vegas, you could tell they're in bed, but at the same time, there's still that possibility of a player could determine the outcome of a game. A player could take some money, like some under the table money, and do something like drop a critical pass on purpose, or not play defense and allow a receiver to get open so some points can be made, or a quarterback decides to take a knee at the 1 yard line rather than go for a QB sneak just so they don't mess up a point spread. So there are ways you can manipulate it, and I think because the league has rules about it, and Calvin Ridley like literally just ignored the rule, they had to make an example out of him, and I completely get it. Because even though what he did was not enough to ruin the games that he bet on, there is still a possibility that if if players were allowed to gamble on their own games or other games, there could be some heavy prices to pay. And when the league allows that, it will allow for some very shady characters, especially the ones in Las Vegas that like to fix and rig things, to get their paws on it. So this is the NFL's way of saying, do not ever fuck with the integrity of the game, or don't even try to. And I get this 100%. It sucks that a $1,500 bet cost Ridley $11 million, because he was going to get paid $11 million just for playing the season this year, and now he's out $11 million just because he placed a $1,500 bet. That is fucking terrible. Like that's as bad of timing as it gets. But it makes sense when we're talking brass tacks here, because you cannot fuck with the integrity of the game, man. You just can't do it. You know what I mean? It's, again, this is no Pete Rose, but I completely get it. I completely get it, man. And you know what? Hopefully Ridley is only suspended for 1 season. They said at least 1 season. Let's hope it stays at 1 season, because I would hate for him to face a situation where he's banned, because it feels like they said indefinitely through at least the 2022 season. That means that they have yet to really decide his true fate. They just know this season he won't play. Let's hope next season he's eligible, or at some point maybe halfway through next season. But this is serious, man, and it really could have messed up the game considering what he did. Even though it was a harmless bet, there's a very good chance if he told some certain teammates about it, and he promised them money if they did certain things out there, anything could happen like that. So I get what the NFL did here. It's the first of its kind in the NFL, but I'll say this, bro. Legal gambling has influenced this shit. That's what legal gambling has influenced this.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's one of the dangers to legal gambling. You have, and especially when you have a franchise that's in Las Vegas like the Raiders, and you have legal gambling right there in everybody's faces. You're asking for shit like that.
It's not like you don't see commercials for this shit during every fucking game.
Exactly. They push it in front of people's faces, so they make it easier for you to place wagers and easier for you to get in on it. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Calvin Ridley's leave of absence and mental health issues had something to do with his a gambling addiction. I wouldn't be shocked, because that's what it sounded like to me. Because it sounds like to me, this guy tried to get around the rules, because they say when you're an active player you can't gamble. I wouldn't be shocked if he took this mental health leave of absence just so he could try to place a bet to see if he can get around the rules, because that's what this feels like to me. And honestly, it sets a dangerous precedence when you make gambling legal and shit like this happen. So just in closing, this is something that is probably going to happen again in the future. I wouldn't be shocked if another player, not him, but I'm saying, like, I wouldn't be shocked if more cases like this not just happen in the NFL but across sports, bro. Because with legal gambling, this is going to influence a lot of wild shit that we have never seen before. We thought Pete Rose was a fucking criminal when he was doing this shit back in the day. We thought the mobsters that made the fucking Black Sox throw the World Series were criminals. I can easily see this getting out of hand. Hell, Maurice Claret. You remember Maurice Claret from back in the day, right? The old Ohio State running back.
Yeah.
That man had some gambling problems that led him being in debt to the Israeli mob. That's when they found, the weapons and the alcohol, because that man knew they were coming after his ass and he was ready for a last stand. So when you start to gamble with people like that and you're at these, shady card games and you're at these shady sports books with certain cats, with athletes and gamblers, all sorts of fucked up things can happen. So I applaud the league for cracking down on it the way they did, because you have to make an example of this. Because if they allowed something like this to happen, then there's a very good chance the league could face, a lot of fixing allegations and things like that. And the last thing the integrity of the league wants is to be questioned in any way, shape, or form. You don't want the NFL to turn into a rigged thing. People already think it is rigged, but you don't want fixing. Rigging, okay, you can leave that for the conspiracy theorists, but you don't want a full-on fucking fix. You know what I mean? That's the one thing the NFL doesn't need. Because then you turn into WWE, if that makes any sense.
Some people think it's already like that anyway, so.
You know what? That's very true. And now you have stories like this coming out. It just feeds that conspiracy even more. So I'm glad they cracked down, because imagine if the NFL gave this guy like 2 or 3 games. Other players are going to look at that and be like, oh, well, shit, I'm going to bet on my team to win. And if I lose a couple games, then that my winnings will basically pay for the fine, that whole thing. So yeah, so just in conclusion, so happy the league did this. They handled this better than they have a lot of things, including domestic violence, racism, all that. But yeah, I'll tell you what, it's funny how the NFL is very swift and cruel in action when their money is affected. Very funny how that happens, huh?
Yeah. They'll always come to action when there's money at hand.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
But I think on a lighter note, the funny stuff that came out of this was all the memes and posts, particularly from like Philadelphia Eagles fans trying to get Jalen Reagor suspended for the same stuff. I don't know if it's true or not. If he's actually, it probably is. But like, but it's just funny because like, no one's taking it seriously, but Philadelphia Eagles fans, we don't want Jalen Reagor anymore. Can we suspend him for throwing games because he keeps dropping nuts?
Oh, man.
Anyway, other news, Ali Marpet, who was Pro Bowl guard for the Tampa Bay Bucks, also retired, called it a career. He was only 28 years old, by the way, so still have a lot of years left, only in the league for 7 years.
That is very true. Oh,
but at least he got a Super Bowl out of it, got to play with Tom for a few years, so.
That is very true. Oh, and speaking of the Bucks, they will be happy to hear this. Richard Sherman pleads guilty to 2 misdemeanor charges. He pled guilty Monday in Seattle to 2 misdemeanor charges stemming from a drunken driving and domestic disturbance last summer as part of an agreement that spares him of further jail time. So he will be back again. Let's hope he can keep his head on straight, though. But the Buccaneers maintaining those pieces. And by the way, speaking of maintaining pieces, just want to throw this out there and get your opinion. The Chiefs apply the franchise tag to Orlando Brown. Do you think Orlando Brown is really worth it at this point?
I was going to go through all the franchise tag players. But
oh, my bad.
We can start here.
All right.
Orlando Brown, honestly, I thought he was not the weak part of their offensive line this season. So I'd say yes. I think he is worth the money.
Now,
especially because you look at probably the free agent pool, they're probably not going to get anyone better. So.
Interesting. Now, I actually have the franchise tag list up, and I'm sure you do too, so I'll let you go through it, and we can talk about each one.
Yeah. So, other franchise tags, the Tampa Bay Bucks, since we were just talking about them, put the franchise tag on Chris Godwin for the 2nd year in a row, which means I don't think they can do it again. So this is, unless he gets extended, his last year in Tampa Bay.
So that means they're going to have to make this one count with Godwin then.
Even though they don't even have a quarterback.
I know, right? Like,
remember, they were supposed to be the ones making a play for Russ. Tampa Bay. So
You know who they might be making a play for that I did not, whose name I didn't throw out yet, but probably should. Deshaun Watson.
that's true.
Deshaun Watson
Oh,
is open. However, I believe I think today was like the deposition or something, or no, I'm sorry. The some of the victims spoke out in court, and he pretty much was gonna say whether he would talk or not. From what I understand, from what I've read, he is going to have to dish out a lot of money to all these women. Now, obviously, something happened because if you have this many accusers, that means you did something. I mean, it's one thing if it's just a woman trying to plot against him. But if you have this many accusers, he did something. There's no question. But what I feel like is going to happen is eventually he's going to pay his way out of this. And as a result, he's going to need some money and he's going to need to play now. I thought the Commanders were going to be desperate enough to make the play. They don't seem to want to take on the burden because there's too much unknown, so they went with Carson Wentz. I wouldn't be shocked if the Colts said no. Miami already said no. Denver clearly is not going to go for him now. Yeah, it seems like Tampa is like the one spot that I believe is desperate enough to get him because Kyle Trask is not going to be the answer there. He's just not it.
yeah, I don't think so.
So I could very well see Tampa going for him, but that's just a little side note. But anyways,
Well, but the other thing is too is about like I don't even really recognize that as an option because the one thing that still hasn't happened with Deshaun Watson is that once all that stuff blows over, the NFL still hasn't given him any punishment yet. So whenever he is eligible to play, quote unquote,
right?
like the NFL is probably going to suspend him for another year. So that doesn't help Tampa Bay this year.
It's definitely not going to help him, but it does say a lot that there are teams desperate enough to inquire about him and that they're calling for him. So it's clear that these teams are willing to take on the burden just for the sake of having a quarterback. I figured Washington would be on that list, but they are not. And you know what? If let's say the Buccaneers do get Deshaun Watson, they're gonna throw Kyle Trask out there this year to get killed. And then after he is sacrificed to the football gods this season, they'll probably bring Deshaun either next season or maybe halfway through if they just only suspend him for like 6 games as opposed to a year. But we'll have to wait and see. But you are right, though. The fact that there's too much unknown with him has already made a lot of teams say no, but there is a short list of teams that have said yes. The only other team that has said yes, reportedly, on Deshaun are the Carolina Panthers. And apparently they're willing to have Sam Darnold be sacrificed for another year just to bring that guy in. So yeah, the list of teams willing to take on that burden is very short.
Yeah. Anyway, further in the franchise tags, staying in Florida, the Miami Dolphins franchise tag Mike Gesicki, their tight end. I think this one of the few really good moves Miami's actually done this offseason.
Yeah.
Mike Gesicki's one of the better tight ends in the league.
Yes, he is. This was certainly a move they needed to make, and I'm glad they did it. But yeah, Gesicki's on the rise down there. It's going to be interesting to see how that new coach can work with Tua in that offense, though. I'm interested to see what he's going to do because he seems like he's in over his head. But I'll wait. I'll wait and see what Miami season looks like before I go any further on him.
And also staying in Florida, the Jacksonville Jaguars franchise tag Cam Robinson, their left tackle, for the second year in a row. So this is their last franchise tag year, and I'm honestly still questioning it because he is not that good of a player.
Yeah, I was about to say he's not worth. Yeah, he's definitely not worth the shit. He was part of the reason why Trevor Lawrence was getting his ass kicked, other than the terrible play calling by Urban Meyer. The bad blocking of Cam Robinson was part of the reason why Lawrence was just getting destroyed back there. I'm with you. I don't know why you hold on to the guy. Not a good move.
We already talked about the Green Bay Packers putting the tag on Devontae Adams.
Yes.
So we'll keep it going. The Dallas Cowboys put the franchise tag on Dalton Schultz. Another very, very good tight end. I think a good move, especially with the rumors of them looking to trade Amari Cooper. They need that extra target.
Oh yeah, they are absolutely gonna need that extra target, man. So yeah, I like that move too.
And then for me, this one's a head scratcher. The Cleveland Browns put the tag on David Njoku, their tight end. This is a head scratcher one for me.
Yeah, not sure why the Browns decided to do this, because Njoku did not add anything. He did nothing noteworthy.
He's always had the potential, but I don't think he's ever really realized it.
Exactly. He's always had the potential, but he's never lived, like you said, never realized it, never lived up to it. If anything, he's always just been there. He's always just been a guy, but he's never been someone that stood out or did anything extraordinary. So I don't understand that signing at all either.
And then our last franchise tag, the Cincinnati Bengals. Your defending AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals put the tag on Jesse Bates, who I think arguably is their best defensive back. So
yes, he is.
The best move they could have made.
Yes, he is. He was not to blame for what happened in that Super Bowl. I put that on Eli Apple's bum ass. Jesse Bates was one of the reasons, like you said, why that secondary was able to maintain itself. So you got to keep that guy there. Let's hope Eli Apple is not part of that equation for Cincinnati. Well, for the sake of Ravens fans everywhere, they probably are. We probably are. But for Cincinnati's sake, they probably want to get rid of Eli. But at least they kept the right defensive back. I'll give them props for that.
Yes.
No doubt. No doubt. So anyways, we now have all the franchise tags, I believe.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. So, now that we have all the news and all the tags there, I believe we have to finish up. Well, do you want to finish up the NFC?
Yeah, we might as well.
We might as well. Oh, by the way, the Chargers. By the way, a signing I forgot to mention. The Chargers.
Well, no, there's still a lot of news that I still had. This might just be a news episode.
You know what? Yeah, well, fuck it. We'll just make it a news episode. We'll do the conferences. Yeah, we'll do conferences next week. We'll wrap up NFC and do AFC.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So yeah, what is the next piece of news, my guy?
Well, you were about to talk about I believe the Chargers signing Mike Williams to an extension.
Yes, sir. 3 years, $60 million. Love it, because Herbert needs that man on the offense. I would love to hear your thoughts about it, though, because this was a team that you were high on this year that unfortunately disappointed us. we had high hopes for them.
I love it. I'm surprised they found the money for it. I fully expected Mike Williams to be gone, because I didn't think they would be able to afford him. Not because he's not a good player. I think Mike Williams is a great player. But, yeah. Wow. I'm impressed.
Yes.
That they made this happen.
Yeah, man. I gotta say, very impressed that they got it done. I'm happy they got it done. And you know what? It's good that they did, because the Chargers... I feel like the Chargers, you know, they're gonna plug up some holes there, but if they can hold on to at least some of the weapons, and they did with Mike Williams, I feel like that offense is still gonna do some damage this year. But they still gotta, you know, correct some things. But at least they held on to one of their primary weapons. That was a smart move.
Well, I mean, yeah, as far as like things the Chargers need to do better, I mean, that I'd like to see them try this offseason is just improving their defense. I mean, we saw in that Raiders game how, in particular, their run defense cost them the playoffs.
Right.
You know, so that's really where their needs are, is on that side of the ball.
Right. Interesting. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
Other news: the Indianapolis Colts, their tight end Jack Doyle retires, calls it a career.
Interesting. He was a serviceable one.
He was a serviceable one. He was pretty decent. He only played 9 seasons. I'm actually a little bit surprised by it, you know, given all that. But he's gone, and yeah, so the Colts got a hole there. I know they have Malik Cox, who's still around.
Yes.
He was their number 2 tight end. I guess he'll move up to be number 1.
Right.
But that's a big piece in their passing game, losing Jack Doyle.
Yeah, it's certainly going to leave a void there. But yeah, bit of an interesting one right there. You know what? I wouldn't be shocked if the Colts actually look at tight ends in the draft. It's not a tight end heavy draft in terms of in terms of prospects, but I will say this: one of the fastest tight ends actually did come out of the University of Maryland, so I won't be surprised if they try to snatch themselves one in the draft just so they can maybe develop their own.
Yeah, I agree. Sticking with tight ends, the New York Giants released Kyle Rudolph.
Ooh, now, hey, Kyle Rudolph was certainly a serviceable tight end. He certainly was he was one of the ones that they could rely on, like when they needed him. But hey, the man's put in the work. I certainly don't hate it.
Yeah, but he'll be available. Maybe he ends up replacing Jack Doyle in Indianapolis. Who knows?
You know, that would be a surprise, even though it could very well happen.
Yeah, it could very well. Some other big big names that have been released from their teams in the past like week or so.
Mm-hmm.
The New England Patriots released Kyle Van Noy after they just got him from Miami.
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. They just let the man go after he literally just gets there. And hey, he's still a very good linebacker though. So I'm a bit surprised that they let him go.
Yeah, me too. I think he'll land on a good team.
He's gonna get picked up pretty quickly too. But yeah.
But yeah, that was a surprise release. But at this point, these players that are getting released, this is all just to clear salary cap space.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of these teams.
I agree.
Another major release, the Arizona Cardinals released Jordan Hicks, another linebacker.
Yes, they do. I'm surprised they got rid of yet another linebacker, but I guess they're just gonna say fuck it. We're gonna fucking construct this thing from the ground up.
Yeah, and it's gonna be interesting. Of course, we talked about it last week with the whole Kyler Murray situation. So it's interesting how they're gonna be able to maintain their defense. Because I think we went through the people that they're losing in free agency already. They released Hicks, but I think Chandler Jones is also a free agent. J.J. Watt, a whole list of names in their defense. So I don't know how they're gonna, fill out that team to be competitive again.
Yeah, I wonder what they're gonna do to try to get that done. But hey, time will tell.
Yeah. And then, of course, the final big name release that I think we can spend a little bit of time on.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about it being an end of the era in Seattle, and they lose another piece I think the same day. Not only does Russell Wilson get traded to Denver, but the Seahawks later that day released Bobby Wagner, who's been the face of their defense for the last decade.
Yeah, he was the final piece of the Legion of Boom puzzle from way back in the day, man. It's an interesting loss. It's a very interesting loss. What it tells me, though, what it signals is that they are officially going to rebuild not just the offense, but the defense. And really, that's been long overdue. The Legion of Boom is way past its prime years. So, excuse me, to get rid of Bobby Wagner pretty much signals that they are now going to move on and they're now going to rebuild that defense from the ground up. And the new Legion of Boom will take many years to make. I don't think they'll ever have a defense like that, but they're certainly going to try to replicate it.
Yeah, and now the big question is, Bobby Wagner becomes one of the biggest names out in the free agent market. He's only 31, so he's still relatively in his prime, got some good years left. He had a total of 170 tackles last year, man.
Yeah.
He's definitely still got it in him.
Absolutely.
So he also had a pick and a sack as well. So where does Bobby Wagner land?
That's a good question. There are a lot of teams that certainly need a linebacker. I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up in the AFC, actually. Switching conferences completely, but...
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, he's certainly going to land on his feet soon, though.
Yeah, I think he'll definitely be one of the first pieces. I mean, I believe that the quote-unquote tampering period where teams can start talking to free agents starts on Monday next week. And I wouldn't be surprised if we hear about Bobby Wagner being signed before we do the show next week, maybe he ends up in a team like, we just talked about Kyle Van Noy leaving New England. Maybe Bobby Wagner ends up in New England. I talked about the Chargers needing some help, particularly in their run defense. Maybe Bobby Wagner's an answer for them, too. So
right.
There's some options for sure.
Definitely. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm certainly invested in it because Bobby Wagner's a good one. He's probably going to be one of the better linebackers that'll be out there on the market, actually.
I agree.
There'll be some there'll be some good ones out there, but Bobby Wagner is going to be the best of the bunch.
Yeah, and then turning around some re-signings, a couple more. The Tennessee Titans re-signed outside linebacker Harold Landry to a 5-year, $87.5 million extension.
Oh, man. What do you think about that one right there? I want to give you the floor on that one.
Last part about Landry, he out of the $87.5 million, $52 million is guaranteed.
Oh man.
He's going to receive $20 million. He will have $20 million on the cap this year, which is just wild. But anyway, Harold Landry, he's only 25 years old, and he had a really good year this year. He had 12 sacks, 75 tackles. The question is was he a flash in the pan? Because, with this being kind of, the last year, I believe, of his rookie year or his rookie deal, he's kind of one of those players, a la, I remember Shaq Barrett a couple years ago, who just balled out in his last year of his rookie contract and then just got huge money.
Right.
This is the same situation here. So the question is, has Landry figured it out, and is he going to make it worth their money, or is it just a flash in the pan? He'll have to prove it next year.
That'll be interesting.
The other thing this does, though, for Tennessee, because admittedly, their defense wasn't too great the last couple of years, but it was a little bit better this year, mainly because they brought in Bud Dupree from Pittsburgh last year, who they signed to a 5-year deal. So now Landry and Dupree are now signed together as a tandem and a pass rushing duo for this defense for the next 4 seasons at least.
I agree, man. It's funny. They could keep him for a while, and it's not like he's going to be somebody that's going to be a rental. If they can keep him for a while, then hey, why not? They're going to get a lot out of him.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, that leads me to the end of the major news that we've got.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one more thing to add: the NFL salary cap will officially be set this offseason at $208 million, which is a $25 million increase from last year.
Jeez. Man, I tell you what, it's gonna leave the door open for a lot of interesting things to happen. It's funny because I feel like we're just getting started with this, because I mean, there are so many other players that are still being inquired about. The Giants have their tight end on the market. They're even taking calls with Saquon Barkley. You got Trubisky floating out there. Let's see. There's some others that are still floating out there that are some good names. So, when free agency officially starts, that's when everybody will be signed. But there's still a lot that could happen. We could even see players being moved around draft time, which is actually not far away from now. So there's still a lot on the table.
There definitely is.
Definitely.
But yeah, now the clock turns towards the new league year starting next week.
Yes, sir.
March 14th is when the negotiating period begins, or the tampering period. as kind of a preview, your top free agents, kind of looking to see where they get signed. Of course, there's J.C. Jackson, cornerback. He'll be a free agent. He was previously with the Patriots. You got names like Von Miller, Odell Beckham Jr., Chandler Jones, Tyrann Mathieu, Allen Robinson. You know, where these players are going to go, we're all going to find out next week.
That's true. And you know what? I feel like it's going to happen in rapid fire too. Like a lot of these signings are going to come almost in an instant because just as quickly as all these transactions happened, it feels like now free agency has officially kicked off. So yeah, it's only going to get better from here.
Yep.
Absolutely. So, with that being said, folks, we want to thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, next week we are going to go over the conferences. We're going to wrap up the NFC, dive into the AFC, and also next week will be the beginning of Smooth's draft preview, where I give you each a prospect at the end of the show, starting next week and all the shows leading up to the draft. I will give you all one prospect that you all should keep your eye on. Technically, I kind of gave you guys one today in Malik Willis, quarterback from Liberty. He is going to be going to the Seahawks, and the reason why he came up today was because of the Russell Wilson trade. So he's certainly going to be in the mix for Seattle, and some other teams will be in the mix as well for him. But next week, I'll have another prospect for you guys. I may do another quarterback. I may preview Matt Corral. I may preview Kenny Pickett, who's supposed to be a big pickup, already projected to go to the Commanders. I may do Sam Howell. I may do Carson Strong. There's a lot of people I could do. Desmond Ridder is also a good one, who led Cincinnati to a miracle season this past year in college football. So there are a lot of prospects I'm going to go over, and I should mention, I don't know if we talked about this actually. Actually, we didn't. This year in the combine, now the combine is not a big deal, but with the 40 time with the wide receivers, this is on record the fastest draft class in the history of the draft, as in the majority in terms of the wide receivers. The wideouts, I believe every single one of them hit in like the 4 time range. You know what I mean? Like nothing but fast receivers across the board, and we're starting to see, in the league with all these fast offenses and high-powered offenses and whatnot, you're seeing a lot more of these fast weapons come into the league. And all I got to say is, bro, the wide receiver class is full of fast receivers. It is full of them. You can snag them at any round this year. So a lot of teams are going to get a speedy receiver this year. That's all I can say. It's going to be interesting. Oh, go ahead. My bad.
No, I was just gonna say, speed is the name of the game now.
It is the name of the game, man. especially when you have all these receivers that are coming in like the same height as us and like around our size, but they're just fast as hell. They're coming off the tracks and they're getting onto the football field. Obviously, Malik Willis, the strongest thrower in the draft class in terms of QBs. But yes, this wide receiver class is going to be super fast. And I won't be surprised if we see a lot of diamonds in the rough come round 2, round 3, round 4, maybe even round 5. You can get a fast receiver. Obviously not going to have the mechanics that a round 1 receiver would have, but still, when speed is the name of the game, you can obviously mold it from there. So a lot of very interesting variables to go over. A lot of receivers that I'm going to introduce you guys to. A lot of speedsters in the game. A lot of Jamar Chase types, if you will. And it'll be quite interesting. Is there anything you would like to close with, though, before I officially close this down for the week?
I got nothing.
Good stuff. Hey, make sure you all subscribe. Make sure you all tune in next week. We're doing the conference wrap-ups, and then, of course, I'll be starting on the draft stuff. So, until then, everybody, enjoy the rest of your week. Keep your eye on all the NFL news around the league, and we will be here to talk about it. And until then, folks, E-Money and I are gone.